Ever get that feeling like cities are almost breathing, like there's this hidden pulse you can't quite see?
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving deep into the data that actually tracks that pulse.
Right.
We're going to figure out how all those digital footprints we leave, reveal these really cool patterns about our lives, how we work, how we live, even how we react to those curveballs life throws our way.
It's pretty wild, actually, how much we can pick up just by looking at the data we create every single day. And to be clear, this isn't about, following any one person. This is about the big picture.
Right.
It's about seeing how entire cities behave, as this collective, all through these digital traces we're leaving behind.
Yeah. And we've got a guide for this journey through all that data, right? It's a PhD thesis, and it jumps right into the thick of it.
Yeah, it does.
Title's a bit of a mouthful, though, I gotta say. On the use of multi-sensor digital traces to discover spatio-temporal human behavioral patterns.
Okay, so maybe the title's a bit intimidating.
Just a tad.
But trust me, the research itself, it's eye-opening. We're talking about using massive, and I mean massive, data sets of those digital traces we mentioned. Things like phone calls, even credit card transactions. Oh, and those check-ins we do on social media?
Oh, yeah.
Those too.
Yeah.
They all paint a fascinating picture of how we use spaces in a city.
So we're talking, millions of data points, and each one tells us a tiny story, creating this constantly shifting map of city life.
You got it. It's mind-boggling when you think about the scale. Like, they looked at, get this, 880 million phone calls just in Santiago, Chile, just one city.
880 million.
Each one a little breadcrumb, showing us where people were, what they were up to. And when you look at all those breadcrumbs together, you start seeing these patterns, right? They call them activity patterns. Basically snapshots of how busy a place is hour by hour throughout the week.
So instead of a stock market graph, we're talking a graph of the lunchtime rush in a business district, or when that late night spot really starts hopping.
Exactly. But they didn't just stop at spotting those patterns. They wanted to see if there were underlying themes within them. So they used this technique called latent dirichlet allocation.
LDA, two letters that sound kind of complicated if you ask me.
Right. Sounds like a mouthful, I know.
So give it to me straight. What's the gist?
Imagine a giant pile of photos, all jumbled up. LDA is like having this super organized friend who can sort those photos instantly into piles based on their hidden themes, like vacations, holidays, family get-togethers. Even if you didn't see those themes right away, they find them.
Okay, so instead of photos, we're talking about sorting those activity patterns and looking for those hidden connections between different parts of a city.
Exactly. And what they found in Santiago was super interesting. It wasn't just a random bunch of places. It had distinct zones, each with its own rhythm. Clear patterns for office areas, for residential areas, even for areas with a mix of leisure and commerce.
So each zone has its own personality, you could say, just revealed through the data. We're talking about the hidden social fabric of the city here. And remember those 880 million phone calls? They compared that data with credit card data from the same city. What do you think they found?
I'm guessing the same patterns popped up.
You got it. Proof that when people are on the move, they're usually making calls and spending money. Amazing how these different sets of data back each other up, isn't it?
Absolutely is.
So we've got these activity patterns, these city rhythms, all mapped out for Santiago. But then, life threw a pretty big curveball, didn't it?
It did.
A global pandemic. I'm really curious to see how that chaos shows up in the data.
Oh, it's really something. The thesis, it actually uses credit card data from both 2019 and 2020. So we get to see right up close how those COVID lockdowns hit Santiago. Remember that leisure commerce pattern, all that hustle and bustle during lockdown? Practically vanished. It's gone. Yeah. It's a stark picture of how fast things changed.
Wow. It really does make you think of a city holding its breath, doesn't it? Those lunch crowds, those packed weekends, just gone. You can almost feel the quiet in the data itself.
Yeah, and there's this even weirder thing. The data shows what you could almost call a city getting ready. See, activity actually started dropping days before the official lockdown even began.
Seriously, they knew it was coming almost.
It's like a wave of anticipation, right? Like this worry and uncertainty just rippling through the city, even before the rules were actually in place.
That is wild. It's like those anxieties, you can practically see them in the data points, can't you?
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about this research. It's not just about mapping where calls are made or credit cards are swiped. It's about understanding how those big events out in the world, those news cycles, even just our own worries, can actually change how we behave. in a way we can measure.
It really hits home how connected our digital lives are to everything else going on, doesn't it? It's not just this separate thing. But this research, they didn't just stay in Santiago, did they? They went global. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, they did. They wanted to see if these activity patterns popped up in other cities too. And this time, they pulled in data from social media to get a wider view.
So now we're talking about like analyzing tweets, those check-ins, all those little digital trails we leave on social media, all to see if each city has its own like digital fingerprint.
You got it. And you know what? Just like in Santiago, they managed to group cities from all over the world based on how their activity ebbed and flowed. Some cities are just go, go, go all week long, and some, they really come alive on weekends. It's fascinating.
Makes you wonder about your own city, right? Where would it fit in? And does it even match how I live my life? Like, does my daily routine actually feed into that city's unique beat?
That is the question, isn't it? And it gets at what makes all this research so intriguing. It's not just about some abstract data points on a screen. It's about realizing that we're all part of this huge interconnected thing. Our digital lives, even the little things we do every day, online and off, it all gets woven into this evolving portrait of, well, us, human behavior.
We're not just using technology. We are the data, in a way. Kind of mind-blowing when you think about it like that.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the implications are huge. As we get better at analyzing all this, imagine what we could do. Designing better cities, understanding how the economy works, even getting a jump on how people might react in a crisis.
It's like we've got this new way of looking at the world now, right? One that shows us the connections between what we do and those big forces that shape our lives. But like you said, this is just the start. So much more to discover.
You know, it really is kind of amazing when you think about it, how something as everyday as like making a phone call or using your credit card, it all becomes part of this massive ocean of information.
It is.
And all that data can tell us so much about who we are, how we interact with the world.
And what's even cooler is it can help us understand not just right now, but maybe even the future a little bit.
Oh, tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Well, imagine using all these insights to actually design cities that work better, more efficient, more equitable, cities that actually get how people live in them. So it's like we're not just talking about like traffic flow and buildings anymore. We're talking about designing around the city's heartbeat almost. Those rhythms, those patterns we talked about, using them to make things better.
Right. And it goes way beyond just city planning. Think about understanding the economy, right?
Yeah.
By looking at how people spend, how they move around, we can get a much better feel for how consumers behave, predict if the market's going to go up or down, maybe even see a recession coming.
It's like we've got this brand new lens to look at things, don't we? One that shows us all the hidden connections between the little things we do and those big systems that, well, kind of run our lives.
Totally. And maybe the biggest takeaway here is this. As we all depend more and more on technology, it's more important than ever to get how powerful this data we're creating really is and to use it responsibly.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, isn't it? I mean, it's got this amazing potential for good, unlocking these incredible insights that could really change things for the better. But we've got to make sure it's being used ethically, that our privacy is not getting trampled on in the process.
100%.
Yeah.
The future is all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Using data's power, but still respecting people's privacy, their freedom. It's a tough one, no doubt, but we've got to face it head on.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
I always love digging into this stuff, but it's been amazing to see just how much those little everyday actions, the ones we don't even think about, how much they can tell us about ourselves and how we all fit into this whole big world.
And with that, maybe the most important question to leave you with is, what will your data reveal?
That's a good one to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this little journey into the heart of the data deluge. Until next time, keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and hey, keep leaving those digital breadcrumbs.